the premise. The Bible speaks much of free will, he says, God's free will. In a universal deterministic statement like that, there is no other room but God's free will. And then how does he defend it in the rest of the book? He goes into natural theology, which...
Now, I just have to stop immediately there. First of all, again, what we're saying is that if you have one autonomous divine will, there is not room for a second autonomous divine will. That there is a difference between the autonomous will of the Creator and the derivative, non-eternal, creaturely will of the human being. And that's not even bringing into consideration the clear fact that the Bible presents something called federal headship and the fact that we have fallen in Adam. I get the feeling that Brother Tassi does not actually believe in that from some of the comments he's made, but I'm not 100% certain on that. So what's being presented to the people is, I don't believe that man has a will. And what I explain repetitively and with a fair amount of clarity in both books that have just been referenced is the fact that the creaturely will is different than the divine will, and that the fallen creaturely will is even more limited than the unfallen creaturely will, but that no creaturely will is ever autonomous or can be autonomous in the sense of being equal to the divine will. So these are categories that must be allowed. If you do not allow them, then you are so simplifying Christianity as to turn it into a kindergarten level exercise. And this simply cannot be. It simply isn't a possibility. Secondly, the idea that I then defended my position from natural theology, it would be offensive if I really believed that there was an attempt being made here to accurately represent what I said. Throughout this, you'll notice something. There will not be a single quotation from either of my books. There are assertions, but never quotations. And this has been consistent throughout everything that I have listened to. No citations, just, I think he's saying this. And generally, that conclusion is an erroneous one. And so, anyone who has read The Potter's Freedom knows that I established both the teaching of the sovereignty of God, his autonomous will, and man's depravity, and his enslavement to sin and his fallen Adam, not by reference to natural theology, but through exegesis. That is what has made the book so successful and powerful, I think, in many people's lives, and having a lasting impact upon someone, is because when you ground your argument upon Scripture itself, then it has a lasting capacity and ability amongst the people of God. And so it is about as accurate to say that King James was a black man as to say that my grounds for arguing for these things was natural theology, because anyone, again, I guess if you want to completely redefine what natural theology is, but as a Reformed presuppositionalist, there's all sorts of issues that we have with the concept of natural theology in the first place. It does say something about the lenses through which Brother Tassi is viewing even that which he reads, and hence that which he sees in the text. And it brings us back to that issue of the overriding authority and power of tradition in the lives of many people.
Says he opposes. He's a presuppositionalist. And he says he rejects classical apologetics or evidential theology or classical theology. And yet he argues compatibilism and secondary causes right out of the Reformed Confessions of Faith, secondary causes.
And of course, I actually argued them right out of the original language text of the Scriptures. Really spent a great deal of time establishing these categories directly from the inspired text itself. That's if someone actually read the book, that's what they would see. I'm not really sure where some of this is actually coming from.
And that is right out of the playbook of Summa Theologica by Thomas Aquinas.
Yeah, Aquinas. Yeah, I'm following Aquinas. Right. Now remember, Geisler would be complimented by that. That insults me and leaves me going, what are you talking about?
It's right out of the discussion of natural theology, and he does it poorly. So he goes with the premise, he starts with there's a free will and it's all God's, and then he contradicts it the rest of the way by saying compatibilist free will.
Again, it's not a contradiction. You are creating a false contradiction by just simply dismissing, without providing any argumentation, the categories that you reject. There is something called creaturely freedom. It is not autonomous, and I provided clear biblical argumentation on this. And if it comes up, then I will ask you to explain those biblical texts, such as Genesis 50, Isaiah 10, Acts chapter 4, where you clearly have the relationship between, in one act, God's acting for his holy goodness, and man is acting for his sinful purpose. One act, two different intentions. God's intentions good, man's intentions evil. God is just to judge the man for acting upon the intentions of his heart. That's the biblical teaching. You may not like it, you may reject it, but you just need to be open about the fact that your ultimate authority there is not biblical teaching, and that I'm attempting to present that kind of biblical presentation.
Wait a minute, that's a synergism, and he's a monergist.
Now, of course, this is one of the more common arguments, but it's not from scholarly Arminians, but from those who just don't do a lot of reading in it, is if you, in any element of discussion of theology, recognize the existence of more than one force, then you're violating your commitment to monergism. This is the same level as Ahmed Deedat's argumentation against the Trinity. The difference between monergism and synergism is that in bringing about the act of regeneration and bringing about the salvation of an individual. Now, of course, salvation